Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. My name is Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I'm here with my co-host.
I'm Jason Harris, filmmaker, comedian, and fuck you for making me watch this, Josh.
Okay. Well, first of all, this is a collaborative process here on Awesome Movie Year to choose our films. And I am no advocate of this film, as we'll get into.
No,
but
you're right. Pulling back the curtain a little, we always, kind of come up with a number, as we do in our epilogue every season, a number of different films that fit each category. And knowing that this was on the list of like box office bomb, I was like, hey, I could argue that The Insider was a box office bomb, and that movie's great, and I'd rather watch that again than see this for the first time. But you won out, Josh. You and your campaign for Wild Wild West has won out.
I mean, I think when we're going to talk about a bomb, let's talk about one of the most notorious bombs of all.
It's fair. You made a fair argument, and I just gave you a fair fuck you. That's it.
Well, again, we're talking about the films of 1999 this season, and this is our box office flop episode. So we talked about a few different options, including some films like The Insider that are generally well regarded, but didn't really do as well at the box office.
That would have been a good one.
That we might get a little more into The Iron Giant in this episode, but
because this movie effed it. Like it effed me by watching it.
It did. But I really felt like we couldn't go through 1999 and have a box office flop episode and not talk about Wild Wild West, which again is one of the most notorious flops. Just like when we talked about Geely. Were you excited to watch Geely?
No. Here's the thing with, since we're kind of already off our normal course here. The thing is with Wild Wild West, like, yes, on the one hand, it was the most expensive movie ever made at the time, right? But on the other hand, it's a flop, but it made its money back overall.
I mean, in terms of the raw budget, yes, you can look at those numbers. It was officially budgeted as $170 million, which, as you say, was at the time the most expensive movie ever made. It eventually grossed worldwide $222 million. And so, yeah, that's more than its budget. But a film like this, it's got to be, close to $100 million in marketing costs.
Sure.
It was considered a huge failure.
Right. But I mean, I think part of that is that when you put $170 million into something, you think like, oh, it's going to be, an Avengers style return on it. Right. But I agree with you. It was a failure, and it is still a failure. I mean, I do think it made its money back because of obviously cable rights, ancillary revenue streams, rentals, all that stuff. Like, this was still like, I think a lot of people probably were like, well, it can't be that bad, Blockbuster. Let's see. And they're like, nope, it's that bad, Blockbuster.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the case for a lot of the movies that we've talked about in this category, that over time, they do eventually recoup their money, in part because if you achieve that sort of notorious reputation, good or bad, people are curious and they'll look at it, and it'll eventually over time reach an audience.
Do you have a favorite box office bomb that we've covered? I guess mine would be Streets of Fire, 84.
Yeah, Streets of Fire was pretty. I really like The Adventures of Baron Munchausen that we talked about, which I know you weren't a fan of.
I liked it better than this.
Well, that's not a really high bar to hit.
Dave,
I don't think.
I mean, not a favorite per se, but I was happy to finally watch Geely after all these years.
Oh yeah, cross it off your list there.
Yeah, I think Dave, unlike you and I, Jason has no affinity for like the enjoyment of bad movies.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
I love The Room.
All right, fair enough. Yeah.
It's not that I don't like bad movies. It's just that like I don't like bad movies with very little to redeem them as bad movies, right?
Yeah.
Like Cemetery Man, when we covered Cemetery Man all the way back in our first season. By the way, this is fun reminiscing about all this.
Good times.
That movie's just wild and out of control and like doesn't make any sense. And I was all in on that, But this, I just, with this much talent attached to it and this much money attached to it, to come out with this, like, shame on all of them, Josh.
I agree. And I think I have some enjoyment watching movies like The Room, where it's like, it's fascinatingly bad, but it's just so crazy that you're drawn into it. But I think also a movie like this that's just straight bad and you wonder like what went wrong. It is kind of fascinating to watch and to just think about all the talent, like you just said, all the money that went into it, and all the many, many ways that it failed. So I am happy to have seen this movie, to have experienced that and be able to kind of discuss it. But
I would have rather watched The Insider or The Iron Giant again.
And those are great movies. And if you haven't seen those, check them out.
Yeah. No, it's all fair. It's a box office bomb. It's garbage. Spoiler alert. It's called Wild Wild West, and we hate it. I hated it. And I'm just putting it out there. Now let's get the episode up and running.
All right.
Awesome
Jason
movie here.
Jason did hate this. And Jason is far from the only person who hated this movie. Not only did it fail at the box office, it was nominated for 9 Razzies, and we've talked about the questionable nature of the Razzies, but certainly, if nothing else, the Razzies are a mark of a pop culture sense that a movie is bad. It won 5 of those Razzies, including Worst Picture, Worst Director for Barry Sonnenfeld, Worst Screenplay, Worst Screen Couple for our stars Will Smith and Kevin Kline, and Worst Original Song for Will Smith's theme song, which is one of the only things about this movie that's not terrible.
Nope, you're wrong. It is terrible.
Okay.
It's a song that made Cisco a star. How are you going to defend that?
Come on, you don't get a little campy enjoyment from the thong song?
Yes, the thong song I get a little campy enjoyment from. Wild Wild West as a #1 song? No thanks.
It's totally stupid, but catch. I feel like the Wild Wild West song is what you would want the movie to be, which is it's totally stupid and ridiculous, but kind of fun.
If that song is bad, then why have I been singing it all week?
That's exactly right. I do like the Kool Moe Dee original Wild Wild West that he sampled, and I don't, the Stevie Wonder stuff they sample is good, but like, it's just, oh man, when you hear a song and you're like, yeah, there was a lot of crap during that specific time period. Like this, I just watched the Woodstock '99 documentary. Just put this right next to the Limp Bizkit set, and you're like, there
Man, you are really harsh on this. So, also was nominated at the Razzies for Kevin Kline for Worst Actor, Kenneth Branagh for Worst Supporting Actor, Salma Hayek for Worst Supporting Actress, and in one of the dumb gimmick things that the Razzies always do, Kevin Kline in a dress was also nominated for Worst Supporting Actress.
And here's 2 things I want to mention about the Razzies. One, if I'm not mistaken, Robert Conrad, the star of the original Wild Wild West, the TV show, accepted all those awards on the movie's behalf because he hated this movie and he said it was going to be horrible and it didn't represent the original show. And 2, who could have beaten Kenneth Branagh? Dave, can you look up who won?
I forget. Yeah.
I love Kenneth Branagh. Like overall, dude, I remember seeing his 4-hour Hamlet in the theater and like being blown away with him as a director and a performer. And like, I think that goes throughout his career. This is one of the worst performances I've seen on film ever.
I mean, it certainly is a very, very, very bad performance. But I think, and maybe we'll get to this in the legacy, that as great as Kenneth Branagh can be as a director and as like a Shakespearean actor, he 100% has this penchant for like over the top hamminess in these kinds of movies. And he's done it in other movies.
I'll tell you who beat him. Ahmad Best as Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah, there you go. That's literally the only person in film history that could have beat him. That's amazing. The one year that he should have got it, they found the one worst person to do it.
So despite the movie not being a success and despite Jason hating the song was a success, including hitting #1 on the Billboard Hot 100.
I remember I was depressed in this, not when reading this, but at this time in my life. I mean, I was going through some depression, and
because of Wild Wild West.
Not just Wild Wild West. I think the overall landscape of mainstream music added to my depression. Because if you remember, it was like this stuff, like that new metal stuff, and like all that horrible boy band, and what would you call like Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears?
A lot of that music is great.
It is.
You're all wait, okay. What are you defending? Are you defending new metal?
I personally like some new metal. I mean, I'm not going to defend Limp Bizkit, but I mean, bands like the Deftones and Slipknot, I think are great and are 2 of my favorites. And I love a lot of that pop music from that era. Those Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera singles are fantastic.
I remember that you do love that stuff because just recently when we covered the Bob Dylan documentary and you kept bringing up Taylor Swift, I was like, this guy.
And Taylor Swift is not from the 90s.
I know.
And yeah.
I don't dislike, like if those were just like one aspect.
You're saying that it created your depression.
Yeah, it definitely did. If that was just one aspect and we had like those girl groups, they're not girl groups. I guess teen princess
teen
pop,
teen
right?
pop. Yeah, it was teen pop along with the boy bands like NSYNC and Backstreet Boys.
And that stuff was
who also had some really good songs that have endured since
horrible
then.
classics.
Yeah,
just truly awful music. But if it was just like Christina and Britney and Jessica Simpson, and then like we had good music, I'd be like, yeah, that's fine. You guys can chill over here and keep. But it was just like an amalgamation of like. It was just like a horrible.
And Carson Daly is rolling over in his grave to hear you say this.
Yeah. Do you think he's got a lot of money, but do you think he looks back and he's like, I think even he looks back and he was like, I was part of the dregs of society.
I don't think so. I really don't think so.
It might have been the worst time in our life for music.
Wow. Okay. Well, as you said, this was based also on the original TV series The Wild Wild West, which ran from 1965 to 1969 and was quite successful and was only taken off the air because people protested that it was too violent. And there were all these parent groups at the time and congressional committees, and this was one of the prime examples of violence on television. And so it ended up getting canceled, but it was huge in syndication. It was revived for 2 TV movies in 1979 and 1980. So certainly one of the reasons I would imagine that there was an interest in making a movie based on it. It starred Robert Conrad as James West, the Will Smith character here, and Ross Martin as Artemis Gordon, the character that Kevin Kline plays here, and Michael Dunn as Dr. Lovelace, who in the show was a sort of recurring villain who appeared in 10 episodes over the course of the series. That's the Kenneth Branagh character here. And I actually watched a couple of episodes of the show.
I'm excited that you watched it. I bet it's better than the movie.
It is better than the movie, but it's not. I mean, I watched the first episode and then I watched the first episode with Dr. Lovelace just to kind of get a quick sense of it. And watching it, it was like, this is very silly. And then I watched the movie and it was like, oh, well, that's on a whole other level. Like the series seems like some serious Oscar, or Emmy-worthy drama
Kenneth
or whatever.
Branagh's Hamlet?
Yeah,
Compared
exactly.
to Kenneth Branagh's Wild Wild
It
West.
is. The Wild Wild West is like Kenneth Branagh's Hamlet compared to this movie.
So I have a question about that because
Yeah.
Lovelace in this film is he's got half a body, right?
Yes.
And he's got mechanical. He's just a mechanical droid human, I guess.
I mean, he's basically just in what is the equivalent of a wheelchair. It's his weird steampunky thing, but it moves him around.
Okay, fair enough. But it's a little more than that because it's not just a wheelchair. It does have the ability to like mobilize and use like kind of arms and legs.
Yeah, but it's a mechanical contraption that he operates.
It's like if RoboCop had a wheelchair or something like that. But that would kind of defeat the purpose.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the point is that with RoboCop, it's like part of him, and here it's just like something that he's like been plumped into.
But I feel like this is now part of him. Like we never see him without it.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I guess we really didn't get into the nuts and bolts, so to speak, of how that thing works.
Boom, Josh with the pun. But so tell us about Arliss Howard.
Arliss Howard is not in this movie.
What about Robert Wool as Arliss? Is he in this movie?
No.
Tell us about Arliss Lovelace on the show because it was not like that.
No. And his name is actually not Arliss. His name is Dr. Miguelito Lovelace.
Yes.
And he is played by Michael Dunn. He's a little person.
Yeah.
So he walks around. He does not have a weird mechanical wheelchair or however we want to call it. And he is not a Confederate who wants to undo the Civil War. What I found kind of amusing is that both him and the villain in the first episode, so both episodes that I watched, the villain's plans involve the fact that their ancestral land was taken by the United States and now they want to take it back. And I'm like, I'm kind of on their side.
Yeah.
And Jim West, of course, and Artemis Gordon, they work for the U.S. government. They're like, we're not going to let you do that and take this away from the good old USA.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like they have a point here, maybe.
Still relevant today.
Yeah. So, of course, then they become megalomaniacal and like the way that they want to get their land back is by Lovelace is going to set off a bomb that kills 5,000 people. And
he's a minority in a 60s television show. He can't have a good point without being a bad guy about it.
Right. But he is a genius. I mean, that's something There's a ridiculous scene in the episode where they introduce Loveless, where he takes Jim West back to his laboratory. And of course, this takes place in like 1869 or whatever it is. And he's like, let me show you all my inventions. As he's invented like the car and antibiotics and the airplane and television. And Jim West is like, I don't know.
So you know what sounds good about this is it sounds like they played him as a legitimate villain and not like, oh, we're going to just make fun of a little person.
Right. No, they don't make fun of him as a little person. I mean, he has a large assistant played by Richard Kiel, who people know as Jaws from the James Bond movies.
And Happy Gilmore.
There you go. So he's obviously a very large man. And so there's that contrast.
But I like that. That's kind of cool. Like you're showing a physical contrast, but you're not, poking fun at either physical, there's still real characters here. That's nice that, especially back in that time period that they did that.
Right, that's true. And his appearance in that one episode was so well received that they had him come back over and over and over again. He, I think, other than the two main characters, is the character who appeared the most on that show. So, yeah, it's totally silly. I'm not saying I would necessarily recommend watching The Wild Wild West, but yeah, compared to the movie.
Kudos to you for watching it. I still don't forgive you for making me watch this. Go on.
All right. So, and then the other background thing I wanted to quickly get in here before we get to the reviews is John Peters, the producer. I don't know if you read up on his obsession with giant spiders.
I did read this, but please do tell.
So John Peters is a producer of this film.
Very famous producer.
And very famous kind of crazy Hollywood weirdo. And according to Kevin Smith, when John Peters owned the rights to Superman and was trying to make a Superman movie and had hired Kevin Smith to write this movie that Tim Burton was supposed to direct, he insisted that the climax of this movie must include a giant mechanical spider. And that never happened. And then later on, Neil Gaiman also claimed that when John Peters was supposed to be producing a movie of Sandman, the Neil Gaiman comic, he also demanded a giant spider in that movie.
I'm glad that he got it, and this is what turned out. Like,
yeah, be careful what you wish for.
It's like, now he can't be like, see, fellas, I told you, They're like, yep, you got your spider, John. Now get out of our face.
So critics did not like this movie, obviously, nor did audiences. It got a C+ from Cinema Score, the audience polling service.
Too kind.
Which is, but I mean, again, the thing about Cinema Score is they're only polling the people who were most excited to see the movie.
Hey, I can't wait to go see Wild Wild West.
Right, exactly. And then they didn't like it. That's a great impression of an idiot who went to see Wild Wild West on opening night.
The West was really wild back in the day, huh? Yeah, Kevin. Hey, did you see Kevin Kline? I didn't even realize that was him dressed as a woman.
Yeah. It got 2 thumbs down from Roger Ebert and his guest critic of the episode, Wesley Morris. And Roger Ebert, in his review, said, Wild Wild West is a comedy dead zone. You stare in disbelief as scenes flop and die. The movie is all concept and no content. The elaborate special effects are like watching money burn on the screen. You know something has gone wrong when a story is about 2 heroes in the Old West, and the last shot is of a mechanical spider riding off into the sunset. Will Smith and Kevin Kline have so little chemistry, they seem to be acting in front of rear projections of each other. They go through the motions, but there's no eye contact. There are moments when all artifice fails, and you realize you are regarding desperate actors trapped on the screen, fully aware they've been left hanging out to dry.
Yep.
But I do wonder, related to the last thing, like, I don't know that that's true. I feel like Kevin Kline and Will Smith are 100% committed to this crap.
Well, it's interesting because, it was developed before, and like Will Smith was like the 3rd leading man, and Kevin Kline was about the second lead that they had. But I definitely felt like Will Smith was, we covered Independence Day, and like he's really popping those punchlines, and like you could see the enthusiasm. I didn't get any enthusiasm from here. It was maybe he was playing it too cool, or maybe he was just checked out, but it was a lot of like, yeah, just really bad puns. And like, there was the knife guy and he said something like knife to see you or something like that.
It's
right.
like the notorious Schwarzenegger puns from
Ice
Batman
to
and Robin.
be, right.
Yeah.
But there was one like that. It was like,
yeah, no, it was the knife thing. Yeah, exactly.
Knife to see you.
No more Mr. Knife Guy.
That was it. Yes, yeah, even worse.
The audience is like, no more Mr. Knife Guy. That's not good. And I love puns. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe they were committed, but maybe they should have been committed to an insane asylum for signing on to this project.
Wow.
Wild Wild West was not the Wild Wild Best. Gene Shalit here all week, everybody.
I think to that point, I think you're right that Will Smith is
was a wild, wild mess.
Yeah, the wild, wild worst. I think that was actually a headline on one of the reviews I looked at. I think you're right that Will Smith is maybe trying to sort of play it cool, that's what he thinks is this character. And so it's not that he's checked out, it's that he's doing what he thinks is the right thing for the character.
Yeah.
So
maybe that's it.
I feel like they were all in on this idiotic nonsense. Whether they realized it was going to fail or not, they're giving it their all.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not saying like, hey, Kenneth Branagh, you're not trying. I'm just saying
Kenneth Branagh's trying way too much.
Branagh, why are you trying like that? Kevin Kline is the most subtle of those three. And I think if you watch that performance, you wouldn't be like, hey, that's pretty subtle, Kevin Kline.
No, it's not. So Janet Maslin in the New York Times said, Wild Wild West is hard to categorize, a quality not to be confused with originality. It begins on a James Bond note despite its post-Civil War time period, then segues into contraption-heavy science fiction and ultimately a Godzilla-style battle with a mechanical monster. Into this same blender are thrown a maimed Confederate villain with Nazi stylistic flourishes, elaborately antiquated railroad scenes, and enough crafty, kiddie-minded pratfalls to make one wonder whether the film really had to begin with a whorehouse sequence. All in all, acid indigestion for the soul.
She's right, man. Tonally, this was just such a misstep here, right? Like,
yes.
They were like, let's split the difference so we can get every audience. And instead, they split the difference and got zero audience liking it, right? Like, go R or go PG. This PG-13, like, totally did not work here. Completely the opposite of what like an Indiana Jones does.
Right. Well, and I think that's Indiana Jones is what they're aiming for, really.
Yes, I agree.
And failing. But yes, I was really taken aback, especially in that beginning scene that in fact does take place in a whorehouse with Kevin Kline in his Razzie winning performance as a undercover.
No, Razzie nominated as.
Oh, that's true. You're right. Razzie nominated. He did not win that one. As the undercover agent posing as a prostitute.
Yeah.
And I just thought, what are they doing here? Because it's not even just like, oh, this is vulgar and inappropriate for the kids that they want to bring in. It's completely, it's just a failure as that, it's not funny. It's inappropriate and uncomfortable and mildly homophobic throughout, and just nothing about it works.
Well, yeah, it's, a quote unquote play on the classic, like, Old West bar fight scenes.
Right.
And there's so much exposition in there. Like, hey, I'm not really a lady. I'm here to save the day. Well, I'm here to save the day, But Josh, even before that, like the opening scene.
That's true, in the hot tub. Yes.
Yeah. And it's like, I started watching this like with my daughter and I was like, whatever, like she sees two people in the hot tub. Like I could get through that. And then like very quickly thereafter, I was like, no, this isn't happening. But that scene had no relevance because like the review said, like it does start off James Bondy where like he's just, I'm having sex with Garcelle Beauvais because I'm a leading man and this is what I can do. And again, no women have any actual content or character.
The female characters are so poorly treated.
Yeah. And it's just like, oh, he's Will Smith. He gets to have sex with a lady and have a heroic, kind of escape. And it's just like, why would I root for him at this point? If like you're not going far enough or you're going too far.
Right. Well, and yes, they're trying to show him as like the suave ladies man. But on the other hand, there's this whole bit in that scene where he's distracted because he's trying to spy on the bad guy. and also try to keep the lady satisfied. And there's this horrible comedic bit where he's like moving his mouth like he's still kissing her, but he's not. And first of all, no one would ever think that was convincing, but also it makes him seem like he's not actually into the ladies so much, that it's just like a cover. I don't even know.
That was where they went with this.
Yeah.
And him and Kevin Kline fell in love and were the ambiguously gay duo of the 1860s or something.
Yeah, that would have been something. So I also did see some user on Letterboxd claim that in that scene when the water tank like dumps out and Will Smith is dumped out of it and he's naked, that you can see his whole package there, but I did not notice that.
I didn't notice that. Did you, Dave?
I did not notice that, but can I ask you guys a quick question before we move on to the next review? And I'm not trying to defend this movie. Let me just get that out here. But is this that much different tonally than the Men in Black films? Because I feel like that's where it's going for.
Well, it absolutely is going for that. Barry Sonnenfeld, of course, directed both of those. I mean, it's been a little while since I saw those, although not that long ago. And I think tonally, the idea that like the character has a romance or is suave and is, attractive to the ladies or whatever is fine. But just the I don't know, the vulgarity and especially like the weird like homoeroticism, homophobia of this movie.
There's a lot of sex puns. Like, you're right. Like
they're in Men in Black movies as well.
But part of that is like they land in that movie.
Right. Well, that absolutely. The jokes here do not land at all.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess if you're saying like, Men in Black was able to walk that line or something, right?
Exactly.
Whereas like this would be like, to use an example that is totally off base, like what if Superbad was PG-13 and didn't go as far as it did and just made jokes that didn't work, right? It's like you have a PG, this is clearly a PG premise right here, I think, right? And they're like, well, we'll bump it up to get more of an audience. And it's like, well, if you're going to go that far with the sexual innuendo, then I feel like they kind of had to go to the R side of it. I don't remember any in Men in Black. It's been a very long time since I've seen it, but I don't remember like any like as much skin in it,
Yeah, there's definitely not that. I mean, again, there's romantic chemistry, at least in the first one with him and Linda Fiorentino's character, but I don't know. And I feel like if there are little puns or whatever, they're quick asides that like younger audience, like if you were watching it with your daughter, she probably wouldn't, I don't know, maybe wouldn't get them, or they just seem like silly jokes.
These just like they said they didn't land, they just hung there, right?
Yeah.
But also part of that's the chemistry. Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith had great chemistry. Will Smith and Harry Connick Jr. in Independence Day had great, or Jeff Goldblum had great chemistry. These two guys, I agree, where were they acting together? Where were they acting on this one?
Right.
But and part of that is like we all like Will Smith, but I think this is one of his worst performances. And I don't think Kevin Kline was good, but I think it was like a little better.
Yeah, I don't think so. They're all no one is doing a good job here.
Kenneth Branagh was the worst of the bunch.
Yes.
So
I wanted to try to find something semi-positive, which wasn't easy, but Noel Murray in the Nashville scene was more generous. He said, "There's no denying that the picture is a mess. But speaking as someone who finds the, quote, blockbuster rhythm to be generally stupefying, there's some pleasure to be had in tuning in those rogue notes. Still, the pans are mostly justified. Female lead Salma Hayek is purposeless, the close-up fight scenes are too complicated to follow, and except for Branagh's big, probably self-penned speeches, there's nothing snappy about the dialogue. What is worth praising is a level of visual invention and narrative spark that's rare for an expensive summer time waster. Between Smith's suave brutality, Kline's foggy romanticism, and Sonnenfeld's giddy contrasting of the Western landscape with steam-powered contraptions, Wild Wild West almost achieves an enjoyable style." So the best he can say is that it's almost enjoyable.
And he's wrong on those points, though. Because like, look, well, I think like we've trashed everyone. Let's save trashing Sonnenfeld till the next segment.
Okay.
But Yeah, man. I didn't buy any of that stuff. Did you buy any of those things?
No, and I don't think the dialogue, whether Branagh penned it or wrote his own lines or improvised or whatever or not, I don't think anything about the dialogue works. I did kind of like, I mean, they talk about the special effects, like maybe they were not utilized for good purposes or whatever, but I thought the effects kind of held up okay.
I did not at all. I
Yeah.
mean, and I hate to bring it back to Independence Day, but I remember when we were talking about that and we're like, it still looks good all these years later.
Right.
I was like, man, this is just green screen city here. I didn't think the effects worked at all. And I was like, where did this money go?
Right. Well, I mean, it went to what was, I'm sure at the time, cutting edge special effects, but I thought they looked, I think I was expecting them to look so terrible that I was like, oh, these are fine. Like, these look as good as effects that I would expect in a current blockbuster.
You had such low expectations. The fact that they didn't meet it made it so that you were like, and I disagree. I think like if I watch the Avengers, the effects are much better than something.
Yeah. But something like one level down from the Avengers, a lot of modern blockbusters, you still think,
Prey.
Like, where did the money go? Like
Birds of Prey.
I go, this is just another movie that Jason hates for some reason.
I hate Birds of Prey.
Yeah, which I quite enjoyed. And I don't remember thinking the special effects were bad.
Well, that's one level down.
That's true. I'm just saying that, like, movies where they spent a lot of money, but maybe not Avengers money, you're like, what did they spend the effects money on here? So
you didn't think that in this movie?
I mean, I didn't think it any more so than in a modern movie.
Okay, I definitely did. I thought, I don't think a lot of those effects held up. I don't think that spider was menacing at all.
No, the spider's just silly.
The train, I think could have, here's the thing. Let's save it because I actually have a point on this.
Oh, Jason has a point. We'll get to it later.
Yeah. So to answer your question, no, I had never seen it before. No, I never want to watch it again.
Okay. And I was sort of surprised that I'd never seen this because it's so notorious. And I mean, and I saw a lot. I think you and I both saw, lots of big summer movies at this time, whether they were good or bad.
What a great year for movies besides this and a few other things. But I was in the movie theater all the time, summer of 99.
Yeah. And I don't remember my impression. Like, did I want to see this? And then I heard it was bad. And so I didn't. I don't recall any impressions of this movie from the time, but I did not see it. So Dave, did you?
Surprisingly, I hadn't either, and I haven't seen any. Of course, I love Independence Day, but then the Men in Black movies. I don't know. I just had this blind spot.
You never seen the Men in Black movies?
Not until recently.
What do you have against Will Smith?
I don't know. I love him. But for some reason, I missed these movies.
Yeah, the first Men in Black is a lot of fun. The second and third ones less so.
Yeah, but first one's very good. Second one tolerable. Third one, I don't.
No, see, I would reverse that, and I would say the second one is terrible, and the third one is tolerable.
All right, I'll go with that too. I don't even remember if I even saw the third one.
Yeah, I only saw the third one to catch up with years later.
Right.
But
don't forget they were going to make a Men in Black 21 Jump Street crossover at one point.
So. Yeah, although I don't know, would that have been with the new Men in Black characters from the most recent movie though?
Well, that's number 4, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the fourth one.
Was that anything?
I don't know. That was really bad.
I forgot that existed.
Yeah, with Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's really not relevant here. So
nothing's really relevant.
We'll come back and get into more of Jason's hatred for Wild Wild West. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 1999, we are torturing Jason with the box office flop, Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
And just let us have it. Give us some more hatred here.
I'm going to keep spitting this fire at it, Josh.
You go for it.
Well, no, I did say I wanted to talk about Sonnenfeld, right?
Yeah.
Because I think and maybe this was kind of the end for him, right? But he had a good run and he had some, not just good movies, he made some great movies, right? I like Get Shorty. I get it. Some people don't like it, but it's a very clever, fun movie.
I love Get Shorty.
Okay, good. Then we all love Get Shorty. There's no doubt Addams Family and Addams Family Values are not only great, they still hold up. Talk about movies that hold up. I've watched them very recently. And when I talk about the effects and the fight scenes in here, and I'm thinking back to what he was able to accomplish in Addams Family Values with the Thanksgiving play at the end, which is like one of the great sequences on film of the last 30 years, and all the kind of cool, moody sets that he's able to do and set pieces, the dances. How do you go from that to this? Like, sometimes you need those parameters, right, to unlock your creativity. If you have access to everything, maybe you're getting nothing, but where, the things that hold you back are able to, make you create in different ways. And I just think like this was just maybe like, here, have a blank check and do whatever you want. And he wasn't on the same level of just, cutting edge creativity, just forward thinking with this.
Yeah, I remember at the time, Sonnenfeld, and this is why, again, it sort of surprises me that I didn't see this, because I loved those movies at the time. I loved those Addams Family movies. I loved Get Shorty. I really liked the first Men in Black. That was also before this. And it seemed to me at the time that he had this sort of synthesis of this big, popular, blockbuster, special effects-y style with this clever sense of humor. Like he was, Tim Burton meets the Coen brothers or something. And I was all in at that time. If you had asked me in, 1998,
one of your favorites.
Absolutely. He would have been one of my favorites. And I don't know, because you're right. Not only is this movie bad, but it's the end for him, essentially. Like he's really never gotten back to the level of quality that he had in those early films. And I don't know if it's like you're saying, that freedom of here, you now have this massive budget to do whatever you want. I mean, I think there probably are a lot of parameters here, whether it's from this screenplay that was rewritten a million times.
Yeah, well, that's where the problem starts here, right?
Sure, but that's something that he's got to follow, or whether it's crazy producer John Peters demanding things of him, or it's Will Smith is now a huge star and has to do huge star things. I mean, I doubt that this is Sonnenfeld with total freedom.
Well, maybe or maybe not. In the end, it's his stamp right on there, right?
Sure, sure.
And you look back at those Addams Family movies, and dude, those scripts, they're so funny to this day. I just hit the chair to make a point.
Yeah.
I just clap back at this movie. But they're still so funny and incisive. And it's like, he clearly had an eye for material, because we're talking about Get Shorty 2, right? And
don't talk about Get Shorty 2, which is really, really bad. Yeah, be cool. Yeah, right. It's horrible.
But I mean, and you look at Get Shorty and you're like, whoa, this is Travolta had gone from Pulp Fiction to this, and he's doing something different and interesting. And I just think, I don't know how, unless there was just so much money thrown, not just at the project, but at him, like at some point, aren't you just like, man, this is not a good screenplay. I don't know how we're going to make this.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. And I'm not sure if he's talked about that in, subsequent years or whatever. If so, I didn't find anything on it, but I don't know. And it's possible that maybe he thought, well, I can make it work.
Maybe
I'll get Will Smith and we'll pull in these special effects and we'll make it work.
It's just crazy to me, because I'm thinking Raul Julia. I'm thinking, like we said, Travolta, Will Smith. And he's got these great leading men who do stuff. And then you think of Angelica Houston as Morticia Addams, right? And who's the female lead in Get Shorty?
Renee Russo is so good, right? In that movie. Yeah, she's great.
Yeah. And it's like, man, these characters have depth and they have a little edge to them and they have points of view. And it's like, can you give me any point of view of any female character in this movie?
Right. Yeah. I mean, but what you're saying there was like, oh, he had these great leading men or these great actors to work with. Like, Will Smith is great. Kevin Kline is great. Kenneth Branagh is like, right. They are and
that's
can
what
be.
I mean. And Salma Hayek is a very good actress also, right? Like Frida, something like that, but that's what I mean. Like how that's what I'm saying, right? He had all this there.
Right.
And it was just like one miss after the next. Cause like, dude, Kevin Kline's got some great movies behind him. Will Smith has totally fallen off, but I think is on the comeback now. And like, he had some great movies there, And
and with Sonnenfeld, they worked together on Men in Black to great effect. So, but what I think is that all of that stuff you're saying maybe is the reason why he's on board. He's like, hey, I got Will Smith. Look at how well we worked together before. And Kevin Kline is great. And Kenneth Branagh is great. Like, of course, I'm going to make this work somehow. And it just didn't.
So maybe I'm going too hard on him. Do we just chalk it up to an entire, but it always starts with the script. We know that, right?
Right.
It's very rare. Not to say it's impossible, but if there's not a good script, like it's almost impossible to make a good movie.
Yeah,
right?
and this is a script that went through, I mean, I think there's 5 writers credited, and Lord knows how many uncredited writers there are, and whether they rewrote it on set, like Noel Murray speculates in his review. Yeah, it's a mess.
Now, originally the story was from Jim and John Thomas, the guys from Predator, the guys who wrote Predator, and even they said, like, we don't know what this is. Like, this is not what we pitched or anything like that, right?
Right,
You know?
right.
So it just, it's everything that could be bad is bad in this movie. Like, I don't have a redeeming quality of it.
Do you think any of it is genre? Because like the steampunky kind of sci-fi Western thing, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Ever.
And that was something I was going to mention in The Legacy. But for some reason, that's a genre that Hollywood is like, what if we threw more money at it?
Right.
It'll work this time.
Yeah.
And you can look at later movies like Cowboys and Aliens and The Lone Ranger, 2 other like extremely notorious flops that are in this same genre. So, but on the other hand, there was a hugely successful TV series in this genre that they were basing it on. So there's a track record of it working.
It is interesting because, you know, steampunk is so specific, right? And I mean, this is 99. Well, what's the other big, huge movie of 99 we haven't talked about?
I mean, a lot of them. This is only the
Matrix.
third episode of the season.
Matrix, right?
Yeah.
The Matrix, which is like steampunk futuristic in a
It's
way.
not, the Matrix is not steampunk.
They wear black leather jackets.
No, the Matrix is cyberpunk.
I'm
not
just
cyberpunk,
picturing Jason
sure.
showing up to a steampunk like party night in a leather jacket.
Yeah, no, Jason's.
I'd wear the goggles and the hat.
Yeah, the goggles and the hat.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Can steampunk be futuristic, or does it have to be?
It's
from
retro-futuristic. It's like this. It's futuristic elements in a past context with steam power, not electricity.
Right. What's your favorite steampunk movie?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I was going to say Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow, but that's
good movie.
That's like
underrated.
diesel punk more than steampunk. If you really want to get into it, but that is a great movie and is super underrated that I
really
watched again really recently.
The hybrid punk movies that are, you know, part steam power and part electrical battery that you charge.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of nuances there, but I think one of the things with steampunk is that I don't know that it's really a movie thing. You know, there's a lot of steampunk like comic books and novels and stuff like that, but I don't know that it's really, or maybe I'm just forgetting something, but I don't know that it's really gone that well. And
Hugo, I love Hugo, Martin Scorsese. I just pulled up a
steampunk list.
Well, I'm going through it. I'm not reading all of them. I'm just picking the ones I like.
Yeah.
What's the Howl's Moving Castle? That's pretty good.
Is that really a steampunk thing?
I think that's kind of steampunk,
all right,
but maybe not. But I'm looking at this list and it's like Wild Wild West is number 8 on the best steampunk.
Right. Well, I mean, I
like,
think that's the thing is that like it's not something that's been super well realized. The Rocketeer is fun, but again, that's more like Sky Captain is in that same time period, and that's more diesel than steam.
Yeah.
But
that Peter Jackson produced flop was kind of steampunky.
Oh, that was horrible.
Yeah.
Oh,
terrible.
the Mortal Engines.
Mortal Engines,
it was
Brazil.
kind of. Yeah, that is really bad. Well, yeah, Brazil is good. I mean, I think it's like it depends on how you define the genre.
You love Baron Munchausen.
I do. Yeah, you could call that steampunkish,
anyway,
I suppose.
I'm just saying it's you know, in general a tough thing to pull off.
Right. No. I agree. And I think so you can say that, oh yeah, they missed the mark on it, but maybe this is something that just hasn't been translated to movies well yet. Or maybe will be ever.
I mean, Josh, had Aliens ever been translated to movies before Men in Black?
No. They were really revolutionary with that whole concept.
No, it's a bummer because I mean, you know, we do talk about directors and streaks they were on, and he was on such a hot streak, and it's like even after this you want to be like, hey bro, you know, dust off, like remember who you used to be. And it's like, you know, he moved into more producing stuff, but I don't think he's really directed anything since after this that's memorable, right?
Well, I mean, we can talk about that later, but he did direct 2 more Men in Black movies after this, and whether you like them or not, they were both successful.
I didn't even remember them clearly. So,
but yeah, I mean, it does seem like this movie in some ways kind of broke him.
So yeah, there was this thing that I read. The original climax of this movie, the Act 3, where they're fighting inside the giant spider, and you know, there's this whole scene where like they drop Will Smith to the 2nd level and he fights Knife Guy and, you know, Giant Man, and frizzy hair or whatever.
Right, the random hench people that we've never seen before. Yeah.
Oil stain.
Right.
Don't forget he fights him. And,
right.
Eye patch and, cauliflower ear, all these guys.
And you're joking, but like
those could have been, right?
The female like henchmen literally have names that are just their functions.
Right. And this is where I'm going with it. The original Act 3 didn't have that sequence. It was just those two fighting famed actress Frederique Vanderwaal and the other females. And the audience was like, what? Why are they just fighting these women who have never served any purpose in this movie before, And so they put this other sequence in, and it's like, oh, now I have two bad sequences.
Right. I was going to say, at least the women have been established in previous scenes as like working for Dr. Lovelace. And that is one of his characteristics going back to the show, is that he has all these like beautiful women who flock to him and are like drawn in by his charisma or something and do his bidding.
Well, I mean, clearly, like, look, female assassins are a huge trope in film. And, we can name 20 good movies right now without having to look up lists of them, right? But like these female assassins have do they even have any lines? Maybe Frederique has like one line.
And if they do have lines, it's just like, oh, Dr. Lovelace, we have to do this now or something.
Yes, Dr. Lovelace, I will kill him after I make you a pie and get pregnant with your baby.
Right. No, it's terrible. And I mean, if you wanted to be charitable to this, you could argue that is sort of on purpose, that these women are almost like enslaved by him, and Salma Hayek's character is resisting that. Obviously, he wants her to join him and she refuses. And so that's her sort of strength as a character. And I don't think any of that comes across, but maybe that's what they're trying.
No. And the whole thing with her, and it's like, we have to save my father. And then it's like, I'm just kidding, fellas. It's my husband. And they're like, what? Let's wink at each other. And
right. I mean, the idea that she was like, I knew you wouldn't actually help me unless you thought you could sleep with me. So I had to lie to you.
Exactly. You two men always doing man stuff, like using women only to sleep with and not helping them because there's an actual human being that's valuable to society that needs help, right?
And yet you kind of get the impression that is true about these characters.
I mean, look, I can see it definitely with the Will Smith character. I think the Kevin Kline character is a little more like he would just go on any adventure type thing. But the Will Smith character is definitely, let's say,
a dick.
Okay, there you go. But let's talk about something else that just worked horribly in this movie. And Dave, it kind of maybe goes back to what you're saying of like, how come this didn't work and how come something else did? How about the scenes where Lovelace and Jim West are having verbal tete-a-tetes, where Lovelace is making horribly offensive jokes about Will Smith's family being slaves and him being black, and to return the favor, Jim West just makes horribly offensive remarks about Lovelace being like only half a body at this point in time, right?
Yeah, it's like a real double whammy of like racism and, like ableism.
Yeah, punching down, down, right?
Right.
And like, I am as everyone knows, I think anything is inbounds in comedy, but man, if you're going to take shots, you better make those shots count. And this is just so unlikable and horrible on both their parts. Like, at that point in time, I could have just been like, okay, I'm done with this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like the vulgar humor or the sort of gay panic humor. It's an effort that just falls flat. The idea that, okay, well, we cast Will Smith, and as you always like to talk about, there were other people originally considered for this role who were white guys, and so that was not
beep 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 alternative casting on awesome movie here. Here's who we had there, Josh. Originally it was developed for this could have been really awesome. I actually think Shane Black was going to write the screenplay. Richard Donner, who directed 3 episodes of the original series, was going to direct it, and pre-crazy racist in public Mel Gibson was going to be the star,
Right. And I don't know about Shane Black, but Donner and Gibson went on to make Maverick, which is a similar kind of movie that I haven't seen. But when Richard Donner died recently, there was a whole outpouring of love for that movie.
I saw it. I didn't like it at the time, but I saw it in the theater when I was a teenager. And I bet if I went back and watched it, but Donner, as we know, like we've discussed him before, so many iconic films, it's tough to break through to the top when you have like Goonies and the Lethal Weapon franchise.
Right. Well, and obviously he's shown that he can take on that kind of action comedy and make it work.
Totally. And jokes that involve pointing out the differences of people and their ethnicities and their skin colors and actually making them likable towards each other, right? You know? So then it was going to be Tom Cruise, and he did Mission Impossible. Good choice, fella.
Yes.
And then it was going to be, then Will Smith signed on. And so the names that they were going to pair with him, George Clooney, who backed out because he was like, I'm playing a second lead, not a lead. McConaughey, who I think would have brought some charm to that.
That could have been
second
fun,
role,
yeah.
right? Johnny Depp, and who
And then he went on to do it later with The Lone Ranger.
right. And then Tim Curry, who would have been good, but was he, like, they probably, he wasn't of the star power.
Right. Not a big enough star.
And of course, Josh, do I even have to, if Salma Hayek got the part in the late 90s, do I even have to mention the other women who were up for the part?
Oh, the other women?
Yeah.
I mean, was it Penelope Cruz?
Yep. And name your other Latina actress that we could cast.
Jennifer Lopez?
Yes, there you go.
Oh, man, that is really sad that I could do that.
That's all true. I'm not kidding you, right? So, yeah, so that's where this movie was going. So in a way, it was already off course before it got there. Of course, this is more of a legacy thing, but Will Smith turned down The Matrix for this movie.
Yeah. So, but my point getting back is that when they cast Will Smith as opposed to Tom Cruise or
Right.
Mel Gibson, it was like, okay, now this changes the dynamic.
He's black, so now that's all.
Right. Well, I mean, to be fair, if you set the movie in 1869, you
Yes.
kind of have to address it in some way.
I agree with you. I think that's totally fair, and I actually think, like, okay, maybe they mentioned like there was that massacre that happened, and his family was all massacred, and I'm like,
Right.
oh, well, they were black and they were slaves, and like you could actually build on this as like how horrible this person had it and why he is fighting for the things he's fighting for, but it was just so clunky and it never really amounted to anything.
Yeah. And the jokes where he kind of jokes about like, haha, look at all you white people are so racist. Like, or plays on that, like when they're going to lynch him.
So heavy-handed.
And,
right?
and just really like off base and tasteless. And, you have to wonder if, like, other than Will Smith, was there a black person involved in the making of this movie? Like, did anyone look at it and say, you know what, let's give this another pass just to kind of
it's
see
interesting because like Dave and I have talked, when we talk about Mel Brooks, we talk about Blazing Saddles. And the stuff that Blazing Saddles was making fun of in 1975, I feel like this movie is actually trying to do like in real time in 1999.
Yeah, it's just misguided in every way.
Can we mention one other thing that's horribly misguided?
Sure.
Right? We the MacGuffin of Dave, you know what a MacGuffin is?
I know what a
Yeah,
MacGuffin
come on,
is.
don't be so.
No, I'm not. I'm just asking.
Dave, do you know what a
I'm
movie
the
is?
audience. I know what a
He's
movie
the
is.
audience.
I'm
That's
the
why I'm
audience.
asking.
Yeah, all right, yeah.
A MacGuffin and like a red herring. It takes you to somewhere else. I didn't mean it towards you. I know you're very film literate. I was using you as like an audience. Hey, audience. Right.
Right. Yes.
So you're setting this whole. So the most famous MacGuffin is Vivian Leigh in that movie Psycho.
Yeah.
You ever heard of that movie Psycho?
Yeah,
Right?
I think so. Yeah.
Right. So we follow her, and it just leads her to Norman Bates.
Yeah.
That's the real story.
Right,
There,
right.
So this whole thing, the whole first half almost is like, we're gonna get Bloodbath McGrath.
Right. Yes, the general played by Ted Levine.
Right. And in the end, he is just doing again the bidding of Loveless. Loveless kills him. So you don't even get that like satisfaction of like the good guy killing him. And then he's like, yeah, it wasn't me anyway. It was Loveless this whole time. And it's just like, why'd we just waste half the movie on this?
Yeah, because we need a story or whatever. But right, and that goes to that personal connection where Jim West is like, this general ordered the massacre that killed my family, and you know, I'm traumatized by it. And at least the general is like representative of the Confederacy and the war and something real that we can kind of grasp onto. But then it's like, no, he was just doing the orders of this crazy megalomaniac villain who has no basis in reality whatsoever.
Right. And then wasn't there a thing in this movie, Josh? I feel like I'm right. It's kind of what you were talking about in the 60s where he was like, he wants to give the land back. Right. And in this one, didn't Loveless say, I want to split the land between all these countries and the Native Americans? And it was supposed to be like, I'm going to give part of the land to the British, boo, to the Spanish, boo, and the Native American. How comes no one's booing when I want to give land back to the Native Americans?
Yeah,
Right? Like,
it was just, I think he just wanted to give them Manhattan, like the island of Manhattan, and that was it.
Just so bad, man. So
yeah, his motives don't make a whole lot of sense. And of course, what he really wants is to take most of the land for himself. So, you know, he is still this selfish villain.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe that was their nod to the motivation initially for Lovelace's first appearance in the show. I don't know, but it does not come across.
Well, Josh, we've talked about
we
how
gotta,
bad this
yeah,
movie,
I think
you know.
we're at the end here.
Let's rate this out of
5 mechanical spiders.
Well, that's the easy one. I was going to say 5 fuck yous. No, I wasn't going to say that. 5 hilarious cross-dressing pretend prostitutes who are really men, but they're in dresses. And that's why it's funny, Josh.
Mm-hmm. We don't go to that. I think there's more than 5 of those in the movie.
I give it 1.5.
All right. I'm sort of surprised you gave it that many, considering
I give it 1.
All right. Well,
1. It gets 1 for me.
All right. I'm going to give it 2 because it's a bad movie. But I mean, I didn't have this like visceral hatred for it that you did. So,
1.
Dave?
I joked on Letterboxd that it's a 2.5 movie that is raised to 3 because of the song. So that's where I'm at. 3.
Amazing. You think it's that
It's a 2.5.
good?
It's not good, but I had some fun with it.
The song is garbage too.
The song rules.
The song is, I mean, I would, it's somewhere between garbage and rules, I think.
That's fair.
So we'll come back in a moment and talk about the legacy of Wild Wild West. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 1999, we've been talking about Jason's favorite film of all time, Wild Wild West, our box office flop pick. And I mean, I think starting legacy-wise, because we talked a bit about this, Barry Sonnenfeld, this really kind of tanked his career.
Yeah, I can't think of, you know, like you said, he did the 2 other Men in Black sequels. And the second one was a success. You said the third one was
I think
too?
both of them were successes financially. To me, the second movie is not really that good as a movie. And the third one comes back a bit. That's the one where they travel back in time and Tommy Lee Jones isn't in it as much. It's Josh Brolin is the young version of his character. And it's fun. It's not great, but it's fun.
But you would think that this would like allow him back out of, you know, director's jail or whatever.
Right. But it seemed like he was only allowed back to do the Men in Black movies.
Right. I mean, look, he is producing a lot of stuff. And I know you like Schmigadoon. I haven't started that yet, and he's an exec producer on that.
He directed every episode of Schmigadoon, and that to me is the best thing he's done since the first Men in Black movie.
Right. He did a series of unfortunate events and just really like nothing except like TV pilots.
Right. TV stuff he's done all right with, but other than Men in Black, I mean, I haven't seen these movies, but almost all, I think, notorious failures. RV with Robin Williams and Big Trouble, which was about a plot to bomb an airplane that came out like right at 9/11, and 9 Lives with Kevin Spacey turning into a cat. I mean, these are some notorious failures on multiple levels.
Can I just tell you, the fact that Kevin Spacey didn't turn into a cat in Wild Wild West is a real missed opportunity. Like that could just be like, we got to have a giant spider mechanical in Act 3. And also, I called Kevin Spacey. He'll turn into a cat for us.
Yeah, I haven't seen that movie, but I feel like that is another one of those movies where people are like, you have to watch this because you'll never believe that it exists.
Well, yes, we should do that at some point in time. But look, I'm very happy that he's back. And like you said, directing and producing Schmigadoon.
Schmigadoon is great. I totally recommend watching it.
And maybe like he'll get we know the Addams Family is being rebooted with the Tim Burton Wednesday series and everything. So maybe, you know, this new relationship he has with Apple TV Plus will give him a chance to direct something like that's not 170 million for them. That could be a good movie. You know?
I want to think that he still has it in him. And watching Schmigadoon, to me, that is what I was hoping for from him, where it's that combination of big, colorful pop blockbuster style with the clever humor.
Yeah. Did you know Barry Sonnenfeld, because he used to be a director of photography, did you know he shot porn for a while?
I did not. I knew he worked with the Coen brothers.
Yeah. And he said after he was done lensing porn, he wasn't able to get an erection for 6 months because of how
unpleasant that was.
Yeesh. Yeah.
Let's talk about Will Smith, who, was on the hot streak here, and it hurt him a bit. It was interesting to me that like he kind of ran away from the blockbusters a little bit after this. His next movies were, serious drama. He made The Legend of Bagger Vance and then Ali, which I think he got did he get an Oscar nomination for that?
He did get one, and he's great. That's a good movie. That's Michael Mann. That's what we want to see, right?
Right. But I think that was him being like, okay, I need to switch gears and show my serious side. And then he finally went back and did Men in Black 2 in 2002. And now he seems in a position where he can go back and forth between those things.
Well, I don't think he's really done. I mean, look, I don't think he's done anything memorable that I can think of in the last decade or so, to be honest with you. Like, I mean, I know he's done some serious movies, but I don't think any of them, at least for me, broke through.
Yeah, there's some of those serious movies that he's done where he just gets to the point where he takes himself too seriously.
Right. And we've talked about After Earth and everything. Like
that.
Yeah. But what I was happy about, and like, the new Bad Boys, blah, 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 he's making Bright too. So like, there's all this crap.
Yeah.
What I was happy about is I did look up what he's doing next. And I'm like, whoa, there's some good stuff coming.
Well, he's got that biopic about the Venus and Serena Williams dad that's coming soon.
And it looks like he's going to be great in that movie, right?
I hope so.
I hope so too. And that's actually probably going to be out by the time this is released, I think.
Maybe. So. I think it's a little later in the fall. So probably not quite, but soon.
So there's that. There's a movie called Emancipation that sounded good. And then The Council, which sounded really good to me, which is about 7 African-American men who ruled Harlem in like a crime syndicate type thing in the 70s. And he plays Mr. Untouchable, Nicky Barnes. Like that could be awesome, I think. So I'm happy to see like, okay, he went back and did blockbusters and that'll always be there, but I want to see more of this stuff.
Yeah, I hope so. And I think we talked about him and all this stuff in our Independence Day episode, but I might've mentioned in terms of more recent stuff that I think that movie he made with Margot Robbie, Focus, where they play con artists. Yeah. And that's also Requa and Ficarra. We might have talked about it when we talked about Bad Santa. They wrote and directed it. That movie is a lot of fun and I think underrated.
I have to check that out. Kevin Kline, I think, man, he's been in the pop cultural zeitgeist since The Big Chill, since '83, right?
Yeah, and he just kind of like, this is a rare, like he's not in a lot of like big blockbuster movies where he plays a major role. So
yeah,
he just kind of kept on rolling with what he does after this.
Well, yeah, I mean, The Big Chill, A Fish Called Wanda. What was a big hit was, which I think was a surprise hit, especially for the time, was In and Out, the Frank Oz movie.
Yeah, was that after this?
I think that was 90, probably before this.
Yeah.
But I wonder how that holds up, because that was treating someone coming out of the closet with a comedic but like reverential tone, and now I wonder if it just feels like a lot of outdated gay jokes.
Yeah, it might. I haven't seen that in a while. Dave, of course, and in this movie he also plays the president as well as someone impersonating the president. So there's a real connection there.
Yeah, that's true. He's got a bunch of stuff coming out. Some of it looks good. I sent a preview to you of a movie. Was that The Starling I sent you to a movie to, the Melissa McCarthy movie?
Oh, that's coming up on Netflix.
Yeah, and he's in that, and he plays like kind of like the crotchety veterinarian who's like going to be her therapist, and he looks good in that. The craziest one that I saw, and this is just wild, is there's a movie called The Diary about a man from Hong Kong in the 1930s who leaves Hong Kong to go to Europe to reconnect with his like lost love, written and directed by Jackie Chan. A drama, I think.
Interesting. Yeah. And that with Kevin Kline?
I don't think he's the lead, but I think he's like a supporting player. But I'm like, I can't think. Have we seen that from Jackie Chan before?
I think he has directed, but only like martial arts movies.
Right. But that's what I mean. Like something written and directed that sounds like a very straightforward drama. That sounds interesting to me.
Yeah. So I wanted to mention, as I alluded to, like Kenneth Branagh, sure, known for directing and starring in Shakespearean films, and also has directed a lot of blockbusters in more recent years.
He's killing it right now.
He's very successful, even though I'm not sure that I think those movies are good.
You're talking about Murder on the Orient Express.
Well, there's
Death on the Nile.
There's those, and I mean, he also directed Jack Ryan's Shadow Recruit. He directed the Cinderella remake for Disney.
Yeah,
he did direct Artemis Fowl, which could be the box office flop episode of 2020.
Well, hey, I mean, dude, that Hamlet that he did, that 4-hour Hamlet, I remember watching like the Mel Gibson Hamlet, which is like, 2-hour movie. And then I watched this 4-hour Hamlet. I went to the theater in the Gold Coast where you watch 2 hours, and the Gold Coast doesn't exist anymore as a theater. It would be like our indie theater in a casino, right? You watch 2 hours, there's a real intermission, then you watch the next 2 hours. That is mind-blowingly like an achievement. That movie is incredible.
Wow, I'll have to. I think I saw the Mel Gibson one like in high school in a class.
But like this one is like holy cow, like a real achievement of film.
Yeah, I did just want to say though that he has this, sort of side gig doing these hammy villain roles. Maybe none of them to the level of this. But if you see him in Harry Potter, especially in the Jack Ryan movie that he directed, where he plays this like Russian villain with this awful accent, and even in Tenet recently, like he kind of likes doing the ridiculous villain.
Yeah, you're right. There's a thing he's doing called The Scripted Isle, which is going to be like one of those British miniseries that I like love those things. But I want to recommend a movie that I bet you guys haven't seen that he directed, Peter's Friends from like 92, about like an improv troupe from like college that gets back together to like have a party or reunion like 10 years later, co-written by Rita Rudner and I think her husband. Peter's Friends is a great movie from the early 90s that I highly recommend.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. So,
and also let's give a little love to Salma Hayek, who's having quite a year. I mean, Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, forget that. But like she's in Eternals, House of Gucci coming up. Like she's got some good stuff coming out, I think, again. And I definitely recommend Frida.
Yeah. She's very talented in this movie, totally wastes her talents. And
yes.
she's it's a shame.
But I think she's doing this thing where she's like, hey, I'm aging and I'm going to play characters who are age appropriate and I'm going to be very good in them. And like, that's awesome. Like we don't, it seems like there are more roles for women who are getting older now. We hope, right?
Yeah, we hope. And she's certainly in a position where she can pick what roles that she wants to take. So that's good. I just find John Peters kind of fascinating. He is one of these like only in Hollywood crazy people, including his recent 12-day marriage to Pamela Anderson. I realize that's not actually part of the legacy of this movie, but just, I mean, and he's one of these people that I feel like he sort of stumbled into Hollywood and made some accidentally good business moves.
Falling upwards.
Yeah, like buying the rights to Superman back when nobody wanted the rights to Superman, and now he's contractually obligated to be credited as a producer on every Superman movie.
When was that?
Well, I think it was in the 80s that he bought the rights.
Really? So how much older is he than Pamela Anderson?
Oh, quite a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, he dated Barbra Streisand in the 70s. But again, it's because of that, he was a producer on her version of A Star Is Born, and thus was obligated to be credited as a producer on the Star Is Born remake.
Yeah.
He's credited as a producer on Superman Returns, the Bryan Singer film, as well as on Man of Steel, the most recent Superman movie that supposedly he was banned from the set because of his horrible contributions.
Do you have any more like awesome stories about him for us?
No, I mean, the fact that Christopher Nolan banned him from the set of Man of Steel is about all I've got. But yeah, the Pamela Anderson thing is the most recent one. Then they did not file their marriage certificate, so the marriage was not ever legal. And then they broke up 12 days later.
Which was Man of Steel? Is that
was the Zack Snyder film, the first Zack Snyder film.
And Christopher Nolan produced it.
Yeah, he produced it, and so as producer, he made the decision that this guy who is technically a producer, but presumably didn't contribute anything creatively, but was like, I'm going to come hang out. And he was like, oh, no, you are not.
You not to,
yeah,
so.
Exactly.
Well, that's cool. I do want to mention one more person who is definitely awesome and not awesome was Elmer Bernstein, the guy who did the music here, who has Oscars for Thoroughly Modern Millie, 1967. Remember that year, Josh?
Oh, yeah.
And he's got 14 Oscar nominations. He's got 2 Golden Globes, an Emmy, and 2 Grammy nods. So like 2 Tony nods. Like he's done a ton of great music throughout the years, including the music for Slapshot 19.
All right. And the music here, even though I know you hate the song, the score is good.
Yes,
the score is
that's
good.
What I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So that's all I have to say because I am actually ending on a high note.
All right. Well, then let's do that. That is Wild Wild West, and that is this episode of Awesome Movie Year. Let's continue the conversation about this brilliant film on social media.
Yeah, and please, if someone wants to defend it, we welcome that. And tell us where we're wrong. We're on social media. I'm Jason Harris Comedy on Facebook and Instagram. Jay Harris Comedy on Twitter. And go for jason.com, a website from 1869. Not very good. AwesomeMovieYear.com. Straightforward. It works. Hooray. Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram. Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter.
I am at joshbellhateseverything.com, where I wrote a series of posts about the Men in Black movies once. And Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook and at Signal Bleed on Twitter. And check out our producer.
Wait, let's congratulate him. 200 episodes of piecing it together.
Yeah, that's a way to go. And the 200th episode was that weird Glenn Danzig vampire Western movie.
It sure was. Yeah.
Thematically appropriate with what we're talking about here. So yeah, check out David Rosen's Piecing It Together podcast.
Yes. Find it wherever you listen to podcasts and follow us on social media at Piecing Pod.
So Jason, hopefully you'll be more excited about what we have coming up in our next episode.
Yes, Josh. It's a very depressing film that didn't depress me nearly as much as Wild Wild West. It won the Cannes Palme d'Or. That's not an accent.
No.
But it's our Palme d'Or winner of 1999, a film called Rosetta, a Belgian and French kind of collaboration.
So tune in next time for Rosetta, and thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.
Yeesh. Someone's hard on this movie.
Man.